Well, it's been a theme of the past few off seasons, but once again, the Philadelphia Eagles are having an incredible off season, this time fueled by yet another impressive Howie Roseman draft. Today, we will talk about some more of these picks and just overall how well this went. But I want to know from you, Eagle Nation, drop your grade down below. What would you grade the Eagles draft from A to F? Overall, what grade would you give the Eagles? I'll talk about mine, but first we got to hop into some breaking news because tacking on to the impressive weekend is Howie Roseman filling yet another need. That's right. Last night, the Eagles come out with some breaking news per Adam Schefter. Former Jets first-round draft pick Mekhi Becton plans to sign a one-year deal up to $5.5 million with the Eagles pending a physical Monday per his agents. Becton is expected to be the Eagles' swing tackle. And we came into this draft, and again, we'll get into some more of these draft picks and stuff like that. But one huge need, right? Even one of the reasons that I thought the Eagles were still going to go on the offensive line in the draft was because, well, they may have a need, right? You don't know about the durability of Lane Johnson as he gets older, and, you know, who knows with Jordan Mailata and things like that. So Howie Roseman goes out, pays decent dollar for essentially a backup, a guy who can bounce from each side, and a guy who can fill in and try to revive his career. Once again, Howie Roseman gets it done. Now, I don't want to just sit here and keep saying, oh, Howie's the greatest, Howie did that and this, especially with the way the Eagles collapsed last year. But you're looking at everything on paper right now. What has he not done this offseason? This guy has addressed safety. He's addressed linebacker in some sorts. He's addressed the line. He's gotten younger, added more flexibility. The Philadelphia Eagles had the most draft night trades in the history of the draft since they were tracked with 9. You know what he did with those trades? He added more picks. He added more future flexibility. And once again, has freed up cap space. I always say it, but when Howie gets back to his roots after the Eagles have a tumultuous season, that is when he's at his best. He wants to prove the doubters wrong. And he just keeps doing things that make total sense. Bringing in Mekhi Becton, who's a former first-round pick, a guy who was drafted in 2020 and came out of Louisville and had a couple bad knee injuries, but came back last season and played all 16 games, is a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer for this price tag for a guy to come in and bring some value depth and really overall just bring another big body. This guy's 360 pounds. And like I said, you know, you never know when it comes to injuries. So Mekhi Becton makes perfect sense. And the Eagles add another lineman. And Howie Roseman is just having an A-plus offseason, in my opinion. And Mekhi Becton, it says here, shout out to Jacob Sports, welcome to Stoutland University. Per John McMullen, the hope is that he's the swing tackle and sort of resurrects his career. I think it's a great signing. And yeah, man, I think it's good to get bodies like this, especially at least for competition on the roster, going forward into the future. Now, let's talk about the draft. What grade would you give the Eagles draft this weekend? I'll tell you mine in just one second, but shout out to our sponsor, BetMGM. Enjoy all your favorite sports like never before at BetMGM. Sign up with our code ATOZPA and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. When you register with BetMGM, you'll get instant access to parlays, live betting options, player props, and daily boosted odds specials. And with BetMGM at your fingertips, every play and every game matter more than ever. Find out why BetMGM is the king of sportsbooks. Sign up today with the bonus code ATOZPA and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. If you don't win your first bet, visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Tell you what, some of the odds that I put on BetMGM were wrong. They were wrong because, man, it was a wild draft. You have 14 guys going on the offensive side of the ball to start the draft. Never has happened before. And that means all the defensive guys fell, a.k.a. they fell to the Philadelphia Eagles. So, man, we already discussed the first couple picks, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Eagles get 2 of their top targets, really 2 of the best athletes in this draft, guys who can be instant playmakers in some way, shape, or form on the defensive side of the football. And then the Eagles started trading. They traded back 4 times. People are falling asleep. What's going on, Howie Roseman? Oh, and we finally get to the 3rd round, and they draft Jalix Hunt, a guy who really does not even have that much film, out of Houston Christian University. Howie says that they were very impressed with his skill set and what they saw at the bowl. And yeah, man, the Eagles get an edge rusher. They get a guy that they wanted, and I can't be mad at that. Then they make a couple more trades, and on day 3, we know how day 3 goes, right? You're moving through pick after pick, and you pick up bodies, and once in a while, some of these guys can become gems, you know? And what does Howie do? He goes back to his roots finally, because he didn't do it in the first couple rounds, and he gets a big school player in Will Shipley, brings in a running back. And at first I was sitting there questioning, going, does this really make sense? He just brought in Saquon Barkley. But, you know, Kenny G has struggled a bit. He's been up and down, so I don't think it's bad to bring in yet another back. And Will Shipley has really stuffed the stat sheet over the last couple years, so I think it's a good player there. And then he finishes off the draft in the 5th and 6th round by going with Aeneas Smith, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., we'll get back to that in a second, Trevor Keegan, a guard, Johnny Wilson, a wide receiver, and Dylan McMahon, a guard. And all these guys, at least were talked about in some sort, you know, over the past several months. Like, their names came up when it came to mock drafts and things like that in the later rounds. And all these guys are decent players. Like, from what I have looked into before the draft, like, it's not like any of these guys are just unheard, thrown out of thin air. Like, these are solid players from good schools, Michigan, Florida State, NC State. And I'm impressed, because before I start talking about another one of these players, look at the positions, right? We came into this draft thinking Howie Roseman needs to add in the secondary. He needs to add on the trenches, on the lines. And he also needs to potentially get a linebacker. That's what we thought coming into this draft, because the Eagles have a lot of positions shored up right now, especially after free agency. And look at these guys, man. You get 2 corners, maybe a safety. You get an edge rusher. You get a running back, wide receivers, linebacker, and guards. That is exactly what we wanted. There's nothing more you could ask for. Obviously, not all of these guys are going to pan out. That's what happens with the NFL draft. There's a lot of picks. Sometimes the last pick in the draft ends up becoming a Super Bowl caliber player. You never know. But Howie Roseman looked at this roster up and down. I'm sure he listened to the fans. I'm really starting to believe that Howie listens to podcasts and, you know, the radio, because a lot of these players were players that the Eagles wanted. And I think he's really opening his ears now, becoming more adaptable. But anyway, he addressed every position of need. And I want to talk about Jeremiah Trotter Jr., because obviously that is the cool feel-good story, right? And everybody's posting the pictures of Trotter and his father. And man, Trot was just such a good player for this organization, and making Pro Bowls, and just really a perfect pro, and a guy that a lot of us grew up on. There's some of us grew up on, just, you know, coming to love, right? And he was one of the last staples at that position. So to see his son get drafted, and I remember seeing a lot of people saying he was a 3rd-round pick and the Eagles need to get him early. Well, Howie Roseman did his due diligence. They snag him in the 5th round. They trade up to get him. And, you know, if you saw the phone call with Jeff Lurie, it was emotional, and Lurie's known him since he was born. Just an incredible story, right? I'm glad that they got him. He's not as athletic as I would like, right? Like, he definitely needs to work on his football technique and getting into better shape. But overall, I mean, if somebody has the potential to live up to his Eagles father, who's a great, yeah, Trotter is awesome. So the Eagles get a linebacker, and I'm sure they have more work to do. I think they will, you know, weigh the playing field as we go into the next couple dry months, and see if any other linebackers become available, or maybe before the season begins. Overall, I think rebuilding the secondary is the mission of Howie Roseman moving forward. And now we start to look and think about what happens with James Bradbury. If Quinyon Mitchell is ready to step in right away, that would be huge. Cooper DeJean could be that Swiss Army knife that everybody talked about. And the Eagles landed some of their top targets in the draft. It's like the saying, how do the rich keep getting richer? I don't know. I don't know how he keeps doing this. Last year he gets Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith in the 1st round, and now he gets some of his best prospects. I mean, A+ offseason in my opinion. I'm not going to go overboard and say the Eagles are ready to win the Super Bowl yet, but when I'm looking at the other teams in this division, when I'm looking at some of the teams in the conference, there's no reason that the Eagles should not be able to bounce back and be one of the top contenders and stack up at, you know, near the top amongst the rest. So we will see how it plays out, but give me your thoughts on the draft down below. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll have you covered with all your Eagles news. That being said, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.